It's the Final Word World Cup Daily, day 14. Adam Collins back in London, back on the pod with Jeff Lemon, who is in Antigua. We've got some games to talk about that are in neither of those cities. For Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. No 30-second summary off the top, but a big old headline. The United States of America are through to the Super 8s. God bless America, the land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. Jeff, they've done it. They're the home side. They're through in remarkable circumstances. Pakistan having tied a game and lost in a super over to the States last Thursday. And now with the washout, Pakistan gone, America through. Stunning scenes.
When the red rockets flare, that is the sign of Aaron Jones launching sixes out of the stadium in Dallas in that game against Canada in game one that rescued them from nowhere. Then they came back and beat Pakistan in that super over. And now, well, it's rained so much in Florida that they haven't been able to get on for their match against Ireland. That means it gets the USA a point. That means Pakistan stuck on 2 points, can't get more than 4, even if they beat Ireland, even if their game does happen, which means the USA are through. And, you know, it can seem a little bit unfair, but that's, in a way, the beauty of these kind of tournament structures is that if you're not good enough in the opportunities you have, then you don't get to go through. You don't deserve to go through. If, like Pakistan, you buggered up that win. I mean, they shouldn't have been in that. They shouldn't have even been able to tie that game. It was a late fight back and a bit of a miracle that they managed to level the scores, but they should have won that super over. They had the more credibility on their list to be able to do it. They had misfields, fumbles, wides. They buggered it up in several ways and conceded way too many in that super over. So in the opportunities you have, if you don't make the most of them, you go out. We've seen that happen quite a lot in these sort of T20 World Cup structures. We've seen there have been a few hard luck stories supposedly every time, but all of them come down to the fact that in the chances that those teams had, they didn't make the most of them. And it's a far superior thing to something like that 50-over World Cup 6 months ago where Pakistan almost qualified for the Final Four there and could have. They absolutely didn't deserve to in that tournament. They were hopeless. And New Zealand didn't deserve to qualify in that tournament either. They had a negative win-loss record across the pool stage and still managed to get through for a semi-final, which frankly is embarrassing in terms of the structure of a tournament. This, much better, even if it is a bit cruel, even if it is a bit fickle. It means that the USA get rewarded for what they did well, and they're through. They'll be in the Super 8s.
Yeah, and look, it's not a gimme either. 2 out of 5, there's quite a lot of jeopardy there. And I know that, and Jeff, you can go through the seedings piece to this a bit later. It requires a bit of explanation now as to what actually happens with America. But as a theoretical construct, 8 going through, I don't really like 8 going through when it's quarterfinals, but 8 going through, this is in 50-over cricket, I should say. I've never quite liked the 14 into 8 into quarters. It doesn't feel like there's enough oomph to that, but this format has worked. 20 into 8. There has been, dare I say that word, context to every game that's been played. It's not like a football tournament where you've got 3 games, or we've seen some cricket tournaments, 2007, the most noteworthy, where they went to the football model and one bad loss could change everything. Well, Pakistan have had 2 chances. You're not knocked out with one bad game. They choked against India. It's been a huge week for Pakistan, right? They lose to the States. You're right. They do sneak into a super over. They botch that opportunity. They need to be faultless from that point. They get their prized opportunity to beat their rival in New York. They make an absolute hash of that, remembering they were 92% on WinViz with 8 overs to go, chasing 120 against India. This was no even contest. They were well ahead of the game for 3/4 of it, and they fluffed their lines. And today they suffer from bad luck. And I suppose that is quite Pakistan, isn't it? To tie one game, to have a game that's affected by rain that they have nothing to do with, and to go out. But they are the defending champions, and they are the side that probably should have won the final last time at the MCG. Remember, they were ahead of that game as well. So a huge week for them. The legacy, or not the legacy, but the blowback out of all of this, will Gary Kirsten keep his job? Of course he should. But Pakistan cricket being Pakistan cricket, you'd hope they don't sack him, but they might. The volatility that we've seen off the field in Pakistan that we documented in some depth when they were in Australia late last year after the 50-over World Cup, that still prevails administratively. So you just want them to be in good nick, and look, them not performing here will make stuff happen again off the field, you can only imagine.
Yeah, I think, because Kirsten's so recently into the job, I don't think he can be held responsible. He was basically handed this squad. I know that these sort of things do tend to happen in the PCB more than elsewhere, but I think even for Pakistan cricket, they'd have to give him the next assignment, give him that, that Champions Trophy coming up, for instance.
At home,
and at home. And, obviously if they did badly there, then I'm sure he wouldn't be seeing out his contract. But this is, he only came into this gig a few weeks ago. He barely knew most of the players when he took it over. He had to sort of work them out on the run. And I don't know that there's anything that coaching can do to make the difference to the way that Pakistan have fallen apart under pressure in both of those situations, that super over situation, which wasn't just Amir bowling the wides, it was multiple fielders stuffing it up there, and then the way that the whole batting lineup implodes against India. So how do you coach a team out of that? It seems just about impossible. And the USA are, this is interesting because it's not necessarily, if you get the word from behind the scenes, it's not necessarily a team that's in full accord all the time. It's not an administration that has a lot of harmony. USA cricket, there's a lot of politics behind the scenes that goes into who's getting picked and who's in a clique with who and so on. But this team have had something work for them, something click for them on the field. Even in their game against India, they had patches where they were pretty good and competitive in a really tough assignment. Aaron Jones has just had, the 10 days or so of his life, suddenly going from being their sort of keep things calm in the middle order guy to being their far more attacking player, even the way he took on the bowling. Against India, even though he got out cheaply, he was looking to push that rate. They haven't been overly reliant on Stephen Taylor, which in the past was more the case, and they've had, for instance, Saurabh Netravalkar rocketing to notoriety in the way that he took on India as well, but the way that he bowled in that super over too, so that it's not all on Ali Khan, which in the past most of the bowling has been. So they've just been a team that look like they've got some juice about them, and I think it'll be fascinating. They'll have a very tough assignment in the Super 8s, but it'll be interesting to see what they can do.
It's already one of the great World Cup stories, isn't it? They, in all probability, wouldn't have qualified for this World Cup had it not been in America. And that's no discredit to the American national side. It's just simply the case that where they are relative to teams that missed out, a full member in Zimbabwe didn't make this tournament. Yep. The USA get into this because they are, up the top of the. Well, they've had to perform at the tournament, but get the chance because they are the host. And, I think I said after that Canada game, this is not the dream team, right? This isn't like the way we experience America in most sports is they are the giant. They are the side that dominates, and when they lose, it's a big deal. This is the other way around. But it is a dream sequence, right? They're into the final 8 of their first World Cup. The best comparison, I reckon, is to Ireland in 2007, the way they got into the Super 8s. Most people remember Ireland beating Pakistan on St. Patrick's Day. They won another game in their group to reach the Super 8s, and we know what that did for them. The legacy of them reaching the Super 8s in 2007 was considerable national investment. They were on the map. Their players were getting opportunities, and kind of the rest is history. Within, just over a decade on from that, they were full members of the ICC. As this American team, a big part of it's what Aaron Jones did on opening night, 94 not out from 40 balls, but there are so many other players as well. Aussie Huss, on both occasions when it mattered, he was there to be counted. Netravalkar, the way he mixed it with the very best in the world against India. They had a big chance against India. They had a huge chance, and they seized up. The one time they seized up in this tournament was against the States, and they had 8 days where they were 2-0. 8 days between the win against Pakistan and the no result today, where the only way is down, right? They had 1 foot in the semi-final from the time that Pakistan were defeated by India on Sunday as well. The fact that Corey Anderson has barely been important in their 2 victories so far, so there is still some growth to come in what they'll achieve, hopefully, in the Super 8s from here. It's the road less travelled from a number of cricketers who've started their journey somewhere else and chosen to have a crack at this slightly unusual thing with America. It's an absolute beauty. They beat Bangladesh before this tournament. There is so much going right here. And you hear whispers about where they might sit administratively in the eyes of other full members and that kind of thing. They've been suspended as recently as, 3 or 4 years ago or something like that, Jeff? Well, the success belies all of that. And, it immediately goes down as one of those great World Cup stories like Ireland in 2007. And who knows what will be possible for the American men over the next 10 years because of what they've achieved in the last 2 weeks.
So India and USA in Group A going through ahead of Pakistan, Canada and Ireland. Give us some perspective about Ireland because they've had a shock of a couple of years, really, in terms of on-field results, the women's team and the men's team. And this is the latest where a side that we're we're expecting and hoping and are invested in the idea that they might be competitive to the kind of level that Afghanistan have become competitive. Instead, they've gone the other way.
Yeah, they should be. They've got to write this off. Ireland are a full member. They've got the resourcing that reflects that. Our interview with Warren Dootram recently talking about what they'll be getting from the ICC over the next 4 years or 5 years, whatever that right cycle deal equates to. So there'll be an injection of money into Irish cricket that far outstrips what they've had before. They've got some significant structural issues, not least their venue problem, right? The fact they can't even host Australia at the moment reflects that. Scotland have put out their itinerary for the Australian trip that's been made possible in September because Ireland can't host a team like Australia right now without it sending them bankrupt. Well, those sorts of things will change. So I think they just need to put this behind them. They got caught on that dangerous pitch on day one at New York and bowled out by India, who were steaming. They botch it against Canada, which ultimately does in for them, kind of how we talked about Pakistan, right? You get one chance, not two. Well, they were unlucky against India, but it's their fault. They were not able to do the job against Canada, a side they have covered on paper comfortably.
And conceded the biggest score at that New York stadium of the entire run of games was Canada against Ireland.
Yeah, and look, and Paul Sterling acknowledged in that press conference afterwards, which I attended, that Canada got their bowling plans right that day, and Ireland didn't quite get it right. Having had them like 4 for 40, I think, early on, they got some fundamental bits wrong at crucial times. Couple of good innings there for Canada towards the end, and that's the end of their World Cup. So, yeah, galling for Ireland that it's another nation that's not expected to go through. I don't think anyone anticipated that Ireland would go through, by the way. We had it all penciled in. It would be India and Pakistan would find a way. They typically do. But in the absence of Pakistan, Ireland would have seen themselves as the 3 seed, ahead of the USA, ahead of Canada, a group they could get out of. But they've missed out, and USA are the beneficiary of that. And this is a game that today might have changed that and flipped it over, but not to be. And we mentioned it before, but America gave themselves the chance to put pressure on, having won on that first night. Good on them for it.
So India and USA from Group A. Group C, Afghanistan and West Indies are confirmed as having gone through, Afghanistan beating PNG. We'll look at that game in the second half of the show. So they go through ahead of New Zealand, Papua New Guinea and Uganda. The positions in the group could swap because Afghanistan and West Indies play each other, but it doesn't matter because of the seeding is already determined as to who will play where.
What do we think of that? Where are we on that, Jeff? Because you've paid a lot more attention than I have on this, but it feels like that was a good idea. Like, I understand what they were coming at, right? But the application of it, meaning net run rate doesn't carry through, which is allowed itself to be speculated upon for a number of days now in reference to Group A. It's not going to happen that way now, but it's lent itself to that. And the idea that a team that wins its group won't necessarily benefit from it with Afghanistan. Is that your reading of the situation?
I mean, honestly, I don't think it matters very much. I don't think in a 4-team run, winning the group isn't a big deal. Like, if you're playing the Premier League, you're trying to finish on top. Here, this is the pool stage of 3 stages where you've got to go into knockouts. So I don't think that you deserve a big fat prize for finishing on top of a run of 4 games. It doesn't. And there's no inherent structural advantage or disadvantage. People have talked about India having a potential semi-final spot inked in, but that's probably a disadvantage to them because it gives them one less day to travel and prepare. They're in the second game. So, there isn't anything particularly tangible there, I don't think. So Group C is decided. Group D, South Africa are through. Bangladesh are second. The Dutch, in theory, are still alive, but only if Nepal beat Bangladesh. And then the Dutch would need to beat Sri Lanka. So Netherlands still a chance, but Nepal would have to do something unlikely.
Right.
And Nepal could still, in theory, qualify, but only if they beat South Africa and Bangladesh back-to-back, which seems unlikely. Right. So it should be South Africa, Bangladesh, unless something unlikely happens. And then Australia are through with the England-Scotland situation that we've talked about more than enough. But it puts a couple of tasty matchups together in the Super 8. So the USA would play South Africa, then they'd play West Indies, then they play England. So, interesting sort of situation there with the way that group might pan out. Australia will be in the group with India, which is interesting. I mean, that gives those two a much better chance to go through because they'll be against Bangladesh and Afghanistan, who they would fancy beating. But you've got an Afghanistan-India contest, which is sort of tasty because of the regional situation, I guess, and the close relationship, shall we put it, between those two boards. You've got Afghanistan, Australia who boycott Afghanistan in bilaterals, but we'll have to play them in a Super 8s game. which is interesting in itself. And then you've got Afghanistan, Bangladesh, which means that, if Afghanistan can spring a surprise against one of the other two bigger teams and they can roll Bangladesh, they could go through. So there's a fair bit to look at in those two groups. The South Africa, England, West Indies, USA group is probably the more open, where maybe the USA fancy a semi-final spot. Maybe they could roll the West Indies, but that'd be a pretty tasty contest, I guess, regionally.
All right, Jeff, we have one more game to deal with on this show. That's Afghanistan PNG from last night. Before we go to the break, Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. It's Father's Day on Sunday here in the UK. It's not in Australia. Father's Day a little bit later in the year. If you still haven't organised one of the myriad suggestions from previous daily shows, time is running out. While you won't be penalised 5 runs for slow occasion marking rate. Does that make sense?
Yes,
yeah,
you're marking the occasion. You've been slow to mark the occasion.
Yes. I'm putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. You might be kicked out of the house, disowned, or written out of the will, leading you to being the prime suspect in a murder being solved by a Belgian detective. But you can avoid all of that by bringing your dads, or sundry father figures to Westfield London or Westfield Stratford City for the ultimate Dad's Day Out. Westfield, your dad can't go to the shops and never come back if you're there with him. So Father's Day, we popped the card in the post today for Winnie's granddad, who will receive it tomorrow ahead of Father's Day, which is always part of the tradition, I suppose. And I have no idea what they've got in store for me on Sunday, but I've been told that I'm not allowed to play cricket, which is a sign that we'll be doing something or another around lunchtime on Sunday. So Father's Day here, Father's Day in the UK for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. Jeff, let's take a break. On the other side of it, we have another game and, of course, the Hall of Fame. It is the final word, day 14 daily, Westfield, London, Stratford City, Afghanistan, PNG. Afghanistan have done it in style. Jeff, do you want to summarise it in 30 seconds? Do you feel it?
I could do something like that. PNG kind of wrote the trouble for themselves. 4 run-outs in the innings. They started off with the captain being run out dozily, horrible collapse through the middle order. Fazal Haq Faruqi took a bunch of wickets, as he tends to do, 3 for 16. Kipling Doriga made a few runs to get him up to 95, but Afghanistan chased it relatively comfortably with the big biceps of Gulbuddin Naib doing the job after they lost both of their more reliable openers up the top. They weren't reliable this time. They were knocked over. So they chased it 3 down in no time at all. They're top of the group, and they've got the West Indies to come.
Would have been a pretty big story, Afghanistan being in the Super 8s as the 3rd team to qualify, if not for the USA getting there today, I reckon. I mean, you're right. It feels to me like PNG, like Oman, as they've experienced the tournament, they're probably just fatigued.
They're emotionally exhausted, and you see this a lot in these sort of tournaments where a lower fancy team comes in. They get really up and about for their first game or two. They throw everything they've got at it, and then they're spent, and they get steamrolled at the end.
And it's reflected in the simple stuff, right? 4 run-outs, as you mentioned in your summary. I mean, Vala not sliding his bat in the second over is just not acceptable. Ramanullah was involved in a couple of run-outs and took 2 screaming catches as well, the wicketkeeper. But then, they open up an end. There are wickets from 3 consecutive balls, and then ultimately we see Fazal Haq on a hat-trick, and that doesn't happen. But, fabulous piece of bowling and a great catch from Ramanullah to get rid of Sayaka first ball. And from that point forward, not long after that, they're 17 for 4 after Naveen's first ball was an in-swinger that castles Heary off the bottom edge. He also gets Ura clean bowled in the 6th over. So in the power play, they're 30 for 5, and it's effectively game over, right? So it's all about, just to what extent do Afghanistan beat up on them.
Yep.
As it turns out, their net run rate's kind of irrelevant because they already thrashed New Zealand. They're going to finish top of the group, barring some remarkable thing from here. But I think it's a good sign.
If they lose to West Indies, West Indies will jump.
Oh, yeah, quite right. But still, I think it's a good sign that they're like, you know what? No, we're going to thrash you here.
Yeah.
And they won comfortably. They won in 15 overs. They probably could have won in 12 overs, but the way they finished the job, 2 more run-outs at the end, they were ruthless, Afghanistan.
Well, and you look at, 4 run-outs is the magic number. Think about Pakistan losing to Bangladesh in 99. 4 run-outs was the number there. And the nature of the 4. So Asad Vala, as the captain, not sliding his bat, bat's in the air, well over the line, but in the air. He's run out there. The one with Chad Sopers, we've been enjoying the work of the Chad, who has indeed been great on occasion, but hits the mid-wicket, comes about a third of the way down. Kipling Doriga sort of takes a step, turns back, and then realises that he's probably got to go because maybe Chad's going, so he goes hell for leather to the striker's end, and Chad just stands there and watches the ball come in. He's like, oh well, no point running for that. I'm gone anyway. And then Norman Vanua, who gets his bat stuck in the pitch, where you know, whether that's bad luck or bad technique, I'm not sure, but he drops the bat as he's running through. So he also could have made his ground. So you've got three absolute self-inflicted ones. And I guess the fourth one is the good one in a way, because Kamiya, who's batting down the bottom of the order, tries to run a by off the last ball and goes immediately, doesn't hesitate. He's clear in the plan to try to hustle through for an extra run. So I do like when we see that, was willing to take the risk, and he does sacrifice his wicket, but takes the chance. So there was one good run out and three terrible ones.
Yeah, Ramanula was both of the direct hit run outs plus the two great catches. So he's in great nick. And yeah, Fazal Huck ends up with 3 for 16. Naveen 2 for 4 from 2.5. Yep. Jeff, we spoke about this after their first victory, that with Afghanistan, it used to all be about what their spinners could do in the middle overs. Now it's about what their seamers are doing. I mean, Rashid Khan took none for, right? None for 25 from 4, and that's okay. He's now a senior player. He's the captain. He's got wider responsibilities, but he doesn't need to win every game for Afghanistan. And that's a sign of their development in recent times. And then with the bat, you mentioned Gulbuddin Naib batting at 3. Sure, why not? He makes 49 not out, ends it with a 6. He had our man Asmatullah for company for a time there. Gurbaz, 6 and out. He was knocked over. You know, at one point they're 22 for 2, and they've got some vague hope. But they needed everything to go right, PNG, and that was improbable after Gulbuddin got going.
It was unlikely, and I suppose they have those moments. They've got the moments that they can enjoy, the ones where they've taken it up to another team for a little period of time. And so you've got that partnership with Kipling Doriga and with Ale Now, they've been the two really who stood up. Doriga with the bat, he's been their top run scorer, only 66, but at 33, so he's been more reliable where the batting's been very flaky. Ale Now ended up with 4 wickets in the tournament, which was the best for PNG, and probably could have been 5 as well, because he has a catch dropped. Remember, Gulbuddin nicks one behind when he's on 9, and that catch has dropped, which might have been the chance to put some pressure on. So at 22 for 2, if they get Gulbuddin there, well, who knows? That Afghanistan middle order hasn't been the most convincing.
Yeah, and Simo Kamiya, that ball he bowled to Ibi, getting him for a 7-ball duck. I mean, the pressure was on from Nao's end, and then first ball that he bowled Kamiya to go through the gate. Ibrahim Zadran's an absolute superstar, right? So you're right.
Well, and
it's marginal gains.
That's after having him out and then overturned, because he has him LBW first ball of the over, which is pitching just outside leg for the left armer to the right hander. So that gets overturned, and then 3 balls later, goes through him and bowls him. So that must have felt great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that Nabi's there at the end, right? The Nabi story is well told. And we'll probably tell it again in the Super 8s, because he's played in all these tournaments. Afghanistan have never reached this next stage. We're discussing that in the context of Bangladesh at T20 World Cups a couple of days ago, but so it is for Afghanistan. So this will be exciting for them over the next couple of weeks. So PNG are finished, but this won't be their only World Cup, and that's the beauty of the 20-team World Cup having worked so well. They'll get other opportunities, and if they're not there in 2 years' time due to the competitive pressure, that might be a good thing, right? It's a good thing that there are so many teams, and Andrew Leonard spoke about this on our weekly show, who could make the final 20 when they return for this tournament in 2 years' time. Right, Jeff, before we wrap up our show today, the Hall of Fame, as we mentioned before, is for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. What jumped out at you? You go first.
I think just the fact that our colleagues on the radio commentary had an absolute horror run down to Florida. The flight out of New York got cancelled to get into Miami because the weather was too bad. So they ended up managing to get on one to Orlando, Florida, and then instead of going to Disney World, they got on a 5 a.m. train to be in Lauderhill in time to sit there and watch it rain all day and not call the game. That is a lot of effort and dedication to go to do absolutely no coverage, aside from probably about 50 rain updates in 30-second grabs down the line to whatever station was dialing into them. So for Daniel Norcross and Alex Hartley and co, well played. You did your duty, and it doesn't always reward you.
Yeah, they can sometimes be the toughest days when it's will they, won't they? But on top of that, the dramas with the travel. I've got two for you. Our old mate Richard Kettleborough, Big Dick, had some big dick energy at a couple of those rain delays where we had the umbrella out. He was the guy sort of swaggering through, calling the shots on what was what, not being critical. I love the fact that he was taking control of the situation. But the extra overlay, the conspiracy theories about Kettleborough, not conspiracy theories as much as it is Indian fans really not liking him very much because he's been the umpire when often India have lost, i.e. The third umpire at the World Test Championship final last year, EG, I should say, where that controversial catch, or the 50 over World Cup last year being the two most recent examples. But he was running the show out there today, which I quite enjoyed. And also in last night's game, an old-fashioned grubber, Asmatullah, who we have been on the bandwagon of big time over the last couple of years. He walked out to bat at 4, which is great. I'm glad he's getting more responsibility now in that Afghanistan lineup. But Norman Vanua got one to go. I'm not sure if you saw it, Jeff, but it hit middle stump 1 inch off the ground. That's just one of those things, I suppose. I didn't detect anything else mysterious about the Trinidad surface in the games we've seen there so far. But poor old Asmatullah copping a grubber, a la the example that always comes up, Curtly Ambrose to Greg Blewett in 1997.
Well, they've often called Asmatullah the Greg Blewett of Kabul. That is one of the nicknames that gets around. So, sometimes these things prophesy themselves.
All right, Jeff, that's us done. We'll be back tomorrow. There's quite a lot of cricket over the next 48 hours, so we'll be juggling some daily shows with you'll be involved in some, I'll be involved in some. We've got Cam Ponsonby back, I'm pretty sure, with Daniel Norcross in one of them down in Florida. There are other people. I enjoyed having Rory Dollard joining the show last night as well from the Press Association. Did a terrific job with you on that game in Antigua, brief as it was. And that'll be the theme and the rhythm of the rest of the World Cup as well. Every show brought to you by Westfield. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. America through to the Super 8s. Bye for now.
America, fuck yeah, coming again to save the motherfucking day.